The views are out of this world.
This thing is unbelievable. It sounds incredible.
Golly gee, everybody, look at that.
This week is all about gold. Golden sunrises, golden sunsets, and the gold rush specifically, because on this week's drive, we're going to take you for an incredibly interesting run through some of New South Wales and, in fact, Australia's most iconic gold rush towns. And we're starting our drive this week in one of my favourite towns in this part of the world, Gulgong. It's a fantastic town that you might know of because it is on the $10 note. But I can tell you there's a lot more to the history of this amazing town than the fact that it's part of our currency. It's where we start our drive this week as we chase the gold rush down toward Bathurst, and it's exactly where you should start your drive as well.
Yes, it's on the $10 note, but it's also one of the best preserved gold rush towns in Australia. Located about 300 kilometres northwest of Sydney, Gulgong is easy to get to and is about 30 kilometres from Mudgee. The Gulgong Pioneer Museum is worth a visit, as is the Prince of Wales Opera House, a building with rich history. The new Ford Ranger needs no introduction, and the pick of the bunch if you're into performance is the Raptor that we're driving this week. Raptor starts from $86,790 before on-road costs and options, but your biggest issue right now will be getting one. There's a significant wait already. With serious race truck technology in the suspension and driveline, Raptor is as competent off-road as it is comfortable on-road, regardless of the speed or the surface. This is as good as dual cabs get. With a twin-turbo 3-litre petrol V6, there's 292 kilowatts and 583 newton metres on offer, along with an exceptional 10-speed automatic gearbox. There's also full-time four-wheel drive, even on the road, a bonus when you have this much power and torque. Raptor is a genuine performance dual cab, but it's also a capable family truckster when you need it to be.
There's so much that's changed with the all-new Ranger, and this is a significantly better vehicle than the outgoing model, even though that particular vehicle had been updated over the course of its life so that Ford always kept it up near the top of the segment. But there is so much that's changed with this new Ranger, specifically here inside the cabin. This really does feel like an all-new model, but most of the focus of the changes are what's under the bonnet. That's what everybody's talking about, because now with Ranger Raptor, you've finally got the engine and the power that this vehicle deserves. You've got a V6 turbo engine under there now, but it's petrol, not diesel. Old Ranger Raptor was diesel, of course. And I think there's something to be said for the refinement of the petrol engine, the way that it works with the gearbox. It's particularly smooth when you're just cruising around town, as so many of these Ranger Raptors will. But gee, it's got a real kick in the pants as well when you put your foot down. This makes a lot of power, a lot of torque, and crucially, the chassis can handle it. We chose the Ford Ranger and the Ranger Raptor specifically for this drive because dual cabs are what Australians are most interested in. Top 2 selling vehicles in this country for the last few months, basically out to the last 12, have been Ranger and Hilux, not always in that order. And clearly Australians love dual cabs in the way that they used to love large sedans back in the 80s and 90s. This segment is where it's at for Australian buyers, whether they're family buyers, whether they're driving around town, or as we've seen on this trip, whether they're out touring in the country. And the Ford Ranger and the Ford Ranger Raptor specifically, it happens to be the pinnacle of dual cabs right now.
Originally known as Louisa Creek, Hargraves is around 300 kilometres from Sydney and 40 kilometres from Mudgee, and owes its modern settlement to the gold rush, which is why we're passing through. Fantastic piece of driving road too, between Gulgong, you head towards Mudgee and you come down Hill End Road, and it'll bring you here to Hargraves. It's a great drive, and Hargraves is a really interesting little town with an extremely interesting history. Now, you've probably heard of it, you might have seen it on a map, but if you look it up online, you'll find that about 5.7 kilometres from here, a chunk of gold, a nugget of gold called the Maitland Bar was discovered, and it's one of the biggest ever found in New South Wales. It's got a valuation of millions of dollars. It's about 10.7 kilograms, give or take. Not all of that is usable, but it is a huge lump of gold. And it's got a really interesting backstory as well too. Look that up online if you're intrigued as to what the Maitland Bar is all about. But come through Hargraves, stop, have a look around, do a bit of research on the town. Next stop, Hill End.
We're doing this drive in a Ford Ranger Raptor, obviously, which is effectively a sporty dual cab, but the most surprising thing about this drive is that it's really, really engaging. These are some amazing roads. They're twisty, they go up and down over the hills and through the valleys, and it's a really, really enjoyable run. So if you've got a sports car, a hot hatch, sports sedan, that kind of vehicle, they're going to be perfect for this drive. It's going to be really enjoyable for you, regardless of the sort of vehicle you're driving. And you might not expect that. When you head off into the bush or out into the country, you don't expect altitude changes and roads that go up and down. You think you're just going to be on flat, straight roads, but I can tell you that when you do this drive through the central western New South Wales, it's anything but that. It's been a lot of fun. There's some unexpected challenges and the roads are really engaging, and with speed limits up at 100 kilometres an hour for most of it, you can have plenty of fun without breaking the speed limit as well.
On the way to Hill End, it's worth pulling off the main road and following the signs along the dirt roads to visit the Cornish roasting pits. The site is only a short drive from Hill End and is a significant remnant of our early mining history. Established in 1855, the pits are one of the oldest gold rush sites in Australia and was one of the first attempts at processing gold-bearing ore. Second stop on our gold trail is right here in Hill End, and this is one of my favourite towns in this area. I've been through a bunch of times on excursions and as a kid, but it is a really, really rewarding place to come as an adult. There's a hell of a lot of history here, a lot of preserved old buildings and a lot of beautifully restored old buildings, and this really is a picture of what a gold mining town in the 1800s would have looked like. There's a heritage centre up the hill there and an incredible pub. You can also book in gold panning tours. We stopped at the pub for lunch. That's exactly what I'd be doing if I were you when you pass through. Let's take a look around Hill End. It might be difficult to picture now, but thanks to the gold rush of the 1850s, Hill End once housed around 8,000 people and had 2 newspapers, 8 churches, 5 banks, and yes, you heard this right, 28 pubs. We don't even know if that's true, but it makes for a great story. Unlike other gold rush towns though, Hill End's population shrank quickly once the rivers of gold dried out. By 1945, around 700 people called the town home, and more recently, the population is said to be around just 200. It might not be as busy as it was during the gold rush, but Hill End remains a beautiful, tranquil and significant town on any recreation of the Gold Trail.
The trip started for us just outside Mudgee, so we made our way out there from Sydney. It's about 3 hours, I guess, give or take, to get you to the starting point in Gulgong. And the best part about all of this driving is the amount of option that you've got for things like where you stop and eat, where you stop and grab a coffee, and where you stay, because you're close to big towns. You're close to Mudgee, you're not far from Bathurst, but then there are also accommodation options in the smaller towns that we've passed through. But what's best about this region is it doesn't matter what time of year you're coming out here. It's going to be hot in summer, obviously, but it's just as enjoyable in the middle of summer as it is in the middle of winter. It's a really pretty part of New South Wales, not too far from Sydney, and it's well worth the effort. I've been to Hill End quite a few times over the years, and yet I had absolutely no idea that Split Rock Lookout even existed, and yet have a look at the view. It's quite a highway up. It's amazing what you can see from here. Stunning view. It's only 5 minutes from town, so make sure you jump in the car, get out here and have a look. Legend has it that Ford spent almost as much or as much money on engineering the suspension package of this new Ranger Raptor as it did on the engine itself. Now, I don't know whether that's true, but I do know one thing. The suspension is incredibly capable, and if you're doing this kind of driving, touring out in country areas where you get patchy road surfaces, lots of potholes, washed out sections of road, there's something to be said for the fact that you can just drive straight over them in the Ranger without worrying about it at all. If you're driving a vehicle, whether it's a dual cab or a regular four-wheel drive, that isn't as capable under the skin as the Raptor, you have to pick your way around and really watch the road surface in front of you. In the Raptor, you don't have to worry about any of this. The Baja suspension, as it's called, just eats it up. It's almost completely unaffected by what's going on underneath it. And while the all-terrain tyres aren't brilliant on a slippery, wet road, they're good everywhere else. And this is a fantastic thing to drive when you're on roads that are a little bit patchy, a little bit uneven, and not the most comfortable in a regular dual cab. I'll tell you something that will really surprise you when you take a Ranger Raptor for a drive that you probably didn't expect, and that's the way that it handles. This actually hooks into a tight corner on a twisty road incredibly well, given how much it weighs, how big it is physically, and what it's capable of off-road. And it's yet another example of a manufacturer improving a vehicle's off-road performance, but also getting improved performance on-road into the bargain. And this is a really fun dual cab to drive on a twisty country road. That translates to the cabin too, because it is comfortable in here. There's plenty of room in the second row. The seats are excellent. Ranger seats have been right up at the top of the class for quite some time. These new ones are excellent as well. And this is just generally a very comfortable dual cab that people are buying it to use it for this purpose anyway, but it'll work well as a family vehicle. The town of Sofala sits on the banks of the Turon River, and that's the river you can see behind me. On a side note, this is a beautiful, beautiful river that runs through this part of New South Wales. It's one of our favourite rivers in the region. There are some amazing campgrounds along the Turon River as well. So if you're out this way, make sure you check it out. If you're into camping, it's a beautiful place to spend a couple of days. Now, I'm going to paint a picture for you because it's hard to imagine this in modern terms as we stand here now in 2022. But picture that you're out here and there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing around you. Edward Hargraves, who's out here looking for gold, discovers gold in February 1851 at a place called Summerhill Creek, not too far from here. And quite literally, within weeks of Hargraves' discovery, the town of Sofala is made and has thousands of people living here. All of a sudden, goes from nothing to having a Royal Hotel. There's a general store out here, and the town starts to build up. It's very hard to picture that now because obviously the town of Sofala's here, but when you think of the way that we build cities now, completely different. But it went from nothing to thousands of people quite literally within a couple of weeks. It's an amazing town with a lot of history. It's well worth getting out here and spending some time to dig into that history and take a look at the great town of Sofala. We've finished up the Gold Rush run in Sofala, which is an amazing little town. Again, like Hill End and like Gulgong, beautifully preserved and a lot of history here. So don't rush when you get to Sofala. Give yourself the time to have a look around, soak it in and spend a bit of time in town because it is well worth it. We're going to make our way back to Sydney and we've got a detour in mind. We're going to take a little turn off the main road because we reckon we might be able to find an incredible view worth taking a look at just to finish things off. You didn't think we were going to bring you on a road trip in something as capable as the new Ford Ranger Raptor without a little bit of off-road driving, did you?
Our off-road run in the Ranger took place not too far from Lithgow, where we also met up with Sam just in case we needed a recovery vehicle. The Blackfellows Hand Cave is a significant rock overhang not far from Lidsdale outside Lithgow. If you're in this region, take the time to have a look. It's a short walk from the dirt road and is home to well-preserved Aboriginal paintings of hands and weapons. It's a beautiful reminder of the Indigenous presence of the local Wiradjuri people. What a sensational drive, not just through regional New South Wales, but also through some of our earliest gold mining history. Speaking of gold, the new Ranger Raptor might just be the gold medalist of the new dual cab brigade. As much a performance sports utility as it is an off-road weapon, the move to a petrol V6, not to mention the interior updates, has made a very good thing even better.